Hi, this is James, and I'd like to welcome you to the Oracle Outlook for the week starting February the 6th, 2017. This week I'm going to be doing a Lenormand card reading, and the deck that's assisting me for this week's reading is a variation of the Dondorf Lenormand, which can be found in the Easy Lenormand deck and book set. It is by Marcus Katz Tali Goodwin, and it is published by Llewellyn. So I have the deck on hand next to me, and I'm going to be taking the cards and I'm going to be shuffling them. And as I do for each of my weekly readings, I'm asking the basic question, what do we need to know for the week ahead? So I'm feeling one more time will be good. And now I'm cutting the deck. And I'm fanning out the cards. What I'm going to be doing is a line of 5, so I'm looking for 5 cards to form the line. And I'm just looking at the cards that call out to me. So now that I have my 5 cards selected, I'm moving the rest of the deck to one side. And when I work with a line of 5, I always start with the middle card because I look at the middle card as the central issue for the week or something that we're being asked to focus on. So here we have Crossroads. This is also known as the path or the ways. So when Crossroads is our card for the central issue, we're being asked to look at some choices or decisions that we're embarking on making. I tend to look at Crossroads as a literal, you're coming to a crossroads in life, and as a result of that, you're needing to make a choice or decision. This card is about choices, it's about looking at your options, it's about alternatives and exploring those. It can also be too, like we're looking at either departing a situation or moving into a new direction. I tend to look at that with Crossroads as well. And with that, we're being asked to consider our approach to things. I tend to look at this card as an approach card. So I'm seeing that it's usually asking the question, what's the route we want to take? You know, we're embarking on something and it's about like, what's the means or what's the ways or what's the avenues in which we want to get there? So I'm seeing that with Crossroads, the path, or the ways. This card basically at its core is asking about choosing the best course this week. So now that is the meaning of the card, so we have to look at the surrounding cards for more information about the possible choices, options, and alternatives we are going to be faced with. So from left to right we have Gentleman. Next to that we have Book. And on the other side we have Cross. And at the end of the line, we have Coffin. This is going to be a very interesting reading. Oh, I'm excited. Okay, so what I do is when I'm looking at a line of 5, I tend to look at the cards that are immediately flanking the center card. So here on one side, we have Book. And so Book is a card, with Lenormand being very literal. Book can actually mean a book. It can also be the idea of learning something. This is a card of learning. It could also be a card of teaching. Or teachers. I tend to see teaching with this because it's on the other side of the spectrum with learning. And both of those encapsulate the educational experience. So basically, Book can be about education. It can also be about the idea of here, somebody watching this video may be contemplating writing a book, or as a novelist or an author or works with books, because there's some energy with that. It could also be, and I'm saying this because I am a card reader, so I tend to look at Book also as decks of cards and being a reader, because a book is something that you read and you also read cards. So again, some ideas here. Again, it's about teaching, could be about learning, could be about something having to do with a book, could be something having to do with some project, or it could be that being a card reader. So those are some aspects of Book. Now, the other thing I'm being said to say about Book can also be about something that's being kept secret Book is about secrets, especially when it's like it's illustrated on this card. When the book is closed, it could represent knowledge that's not accessible or knowledge that's not for public consumption. It could also be about a mystery. So it could be, again, playing with the idea of book and mystery. It could be a mystery book. It could be somebody who is a mystery writer, something of that nature, or somebody who is wanting to solve a mystery, and with that they're seeking educating themselves, because they tend to see book as guidance, is about reading up on something. So I'm seeing that. Now if we pair crossroads and book, or book and crossroads in that order, then this could be about a number of books, because crossroads in this sense can represent something that's multiple, or something that's more of than just one. So it could be multiple books. In my particular case, being a card reader, it could be multiple decks of cards. It could be, with that, if you're a reader, it's about having a particular approach, and it could be like a number of approaches. One of the beautiful things about being a card reader, and especially a card reader on YouTube, is that you will find a number of readers, going with book and crossroads, a number of readers, and each reader approaches reading the cards differently. We all have our own approach. So it could be like, if you're starting out, maybe you're starting out wanting to learn how to read, and you're exploring how to do that. So you may be looking at a different number of teachers, you may be looking at a different number of learning styles, you may be looking at a different number of methods. If that is the case, then you're being asked to find the method that resonates with you. Again, going with the idea, there's a number of ways that you could approach that. I'm taking a step back and asking, what else do I need to say about this? Oh, it could be also to, like, if you're wanting to move in a new direction, it could be like, what do you need to know in terms of like, what knowledge do you need to acquire that's going to better help you move in that new direction. So I'm seeing that with book on one side of crossroads. On the other side, we have cross. And so since cross comes after crossroads, it could suggest to like a new direction or a choice. A choice has been made, and with that, there may be some difficulty, or that there's going to be some difficulty in regards to making a choice. And the difficulty could be because there's a number of options. Remember, I said that crossroads was about options and alternatives. So it could be like, if you have a number of choices before you and you're needing to make a decision of some kind, it could be like the challenge or the burden or the difficulty going with cross is about because there's so many options to choose from, and it may be hard to narrow it down. So I'm seeing that. It could also be too, if we're contemplating departing something and moving in a new direction, cross would suggest a couple of things. I tend to look at cross as something having to do with our spirituality. So it could be about, moving in a new direction from a spiritual standpoint, and you're doing that by exploring a number of spiritual traditions, spiritual paths. I'm seeing that in my head, the idea here is there's a saying that all paths lead to the divine or spirit or God. And so it could be, finding the right path for you. So if you're exploring your spirituality this week, it could be like you are taking a look at a number of religions and seeing which one resonates with you. And now that brings me back to book. If we take book and cross and pair them, it could become a spiritual book, or spiritual knowledge, or spiritual teachings, or religious teachings. And again, with that, every major religion has a particular sacred or spiritual text. And so it could be like, in your maybe exploration of finding the right spiritual path for you, it could be a matter of you exploring different spiritual texts so you get an idea of what path might resonate with you the most. Now, could also be too, if we're exploring the idea of, a book or a project of some kind, then cross could suggest that the project could be difficult to some degree, and if that is the case, then you're being asked to have faith. I tend to look at cross as advice, suggesting the need to have faith. So it could be the idea that you're wanting to move in a direction. With the book being closed, it could be like, I don't have all the information I need with that. There's some element of the unknown, or it's mysterious to you. And as a result of not feeling like you have enough knowledge to move forward, then it becomes difficult. It could suggest too that there may be some knowledge needed to move through a crisis or an ordeal, because I tend to look at cross as a crisis or an ordeal. Or with that, whatever the book is in terms of learning, education, knowledge, then it's critical or necessary in regards to the central issue of crossroads either being about a choice or an option. Like, it's critical that you find the knowledge that you need so you can make the choice that you need to make. It's making me feel like it's important to be well read, and I tend to look at that as, being knowledgeable and being informed about whatever the choices, the options, the alternatives are. So I'm seeing that. Now, going one step out. So now we have, on the far left, we have gentlemen. And so now, if you're a woman watching this video, then gentleman can represent a man who is important to the situation, or a man who is important to you. And if you're a man watching this, then the gentleman can represent you, right? So for me, being male, when I first turned over gentleman, I'm like, okay, I'm being given a heads up that I have to pay attention to something important that's maybe directly attributed to me, or in light of the fact that gentleman is now facing all the other cards, it's about what's coming up or what's going on down the line this week for me, right? And on the other side of that, very interesting, we have coffin, and coffin is a card that can represent closure, it can represent something being made final, it can represent completions and endings. So I find it very interesting that was at the end of the line. So at the end of this week, we're being asked to consider what it is that we might need to bring about closing or finalizing or completing this week. So I'm seeing that. And it could be with the central card crossroads about choices, options, and alternatives. It could be like a final decision, so something's coming up and you have to make a final decision on it, or it's the choice to end something and end it once and for all. So I'm seeing that with the possibility of taking crossroads and coffin this week as a pairing. So here we go. If we take the pairing of gentleman and coffin, usually gentleman doesn't say anything more than it's a man that we're talking about, or it's a man that's being highlighted with the card. Usually we look to the other cards around gentleman to either describe him as a person or what he could be embarking on this week. So again, if we take gentleman and coffin, he is now directly facing the coffin card. If we take them as a pair, he's looking right at it. So again, it could be looking at or looking forward to something being completed, something being finalized, something being finished, right? It could also be too that there's a need for the gentleman to either get some rest, because they tend to look at coffin as a card of rest and sleep, or it could be like the choices, alternatives, or options being faced may be about a man who's facing some kind of illness, because coffin can also be a card of illness. So those are some possibilities here. It could be a man who's facing completing something, finalizing something, completing something, but it could also be a man who is facing an illness, and that will be where the choices and the options are coming into play here. And with that, if his condition is an illness, then it could be about needing to get some sleep or get some rest with that condition. So I'm seeing that. Now, if we go with the two cards that are on the left of crossroads, here we have gentleman facing book. So for me personally, this is describing the man as a reader. So that would be me to a bill, or to a T rather. Yeah, so it's a reader. Could also be somebody, again, who, like I said before, is a novelist or an author or a writer, somebody who having literally something to do with books. Could also be somebody who is embarking on a new project. And with that, if it's about a book or a project, could be like, what are the choices, what are the decisions needing to be made surrounding that? Is there a particular path or approach that the person is taking with that? Like, what's the direction of that project? What's the direction of that book? What's the approach of the person being a reader? So I'm seeing that. Could also be too that the gentleman in question is keeping some kind of knowledge to himself, or keeping something under wraps. It's like a big mystery, or keeping something secret. And with that, then the crossroads is, if that is the case, then the man is choosing to do that. Because again, going with the idea of crossroads is all about choices, right? So now moving to the other side here. So here we have cross and we have coffin. So here again we have cross representing a difficulty, a burden, something that is a lot of responsibility. It can also be to a situation that from a feeling or emotional standpoint is causing a lot of grief or suffering. It could also be about somebody who's feeling a sense of persecution. So those are some aspects of cross, right? And then if that is the case, let's say it is a difficulty, a burden, a huge responsibility or an undertaking, then coffin with that could be, the difficulty of being ill or being sick, and all of that kind of thing. If a person is facing an illness, about like the idea of like the burdens it may be placing on other people around the individual who is going through the challenge of illness, something of that nature. It could also be it's critical or necessary, going with cross, that the person in question gets rest. So even with that, it could be a person who's just very busy, and maybe coffin is about the sense of being run down, and with that it's critical or necessary to get rest. So I'm seeing that as possibility. So again, summing up for the week, the beginning of the line we had the gentleman. Gentleman is all about a man. So if you're watching this video and you're a woman, could be a man who's important to the situation that you're going to be experiencing, or a man who's significant to you. If you're male, then this would be you. The gentleman is facing book. Book is a card of knowledge, so it could be about seeking knowledge. It could be about learning something. Could be about education. Could be about teaching something, or something having to do with some project. Crossroads in the middle of the week or the middle of the line is about choices, options, alternatives. It's about choosing the best course. So regardless of whether this is an actual book or it's a project or something of that nature, it's about choosing the best and right path. Cross is about difficulties and burdens, and with that, whatever it is, it may be something that is reaching a critical stage, because I'm seeing in my head the idea of like critical mass. So something that's reaching critical mass, and with that, it's critical and necessary for some choices and decisions to be made going forward. And then at the end of the line, we have coffin. Coffin is a card of something being ended or completed or finished, right? Some sort of finalization, something coming to a close, because I'm seeing closure. So whatever the experience is at the end of the week, we're looking at all the choices and decisions we may need to make that are critical to bring this project, whatever it is, to its state of conclusion, of completion. And with that, it could also be too, there may be somebody who's experiencing a serious illness, and there may be choices or options or alternatives in that process, so that the person can recover. But in the meantime, it may be very important that the person gets sleep and rest. So on that note, I will wrap up and end this week's Oracle Outlook. I am James Himm Mitchell, and as I close, I would like to thank you for sharing the space here for me, or with me, I should say, for this week's reading, as well as I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video reading together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, as well as a wonderful week. Take care.